All right, so we're going to be doing the quiz 4 review. Um, like I said, we're going to break this up into three parts. Like you have three main parts in the quiz tomorrow. So one of the parts is solving and graphing absolute value inequalities. Okay, so we're going to do two of those types of problems. Then we'll move on to finding slope. We're going to do that two different ways, by using a picture and by using points. Okay, and then um, we're going to move on to finding x and y intercepts. We're going to do one where we find them and graph them, and then the last one we do is just going to be finding the y-intercept only. Okay, and then we'll be done. So that's what we're going to do in this review. So let's go ahead and get started here. Solving and graphing for the first one. Now, your objective whenever you're doing absolute value inequalities is to always have the inequality by itself. Okay, so right now you can see it is by itself on the left side. There's nothing multiplying it, nothing dividing it. It's just there. So once you do that, you're going to have to make a decision. Is this an and or an or problem, right? So I'm just going to rewrite the problem just for my own purposes. I'm going to pay attention to this, and this right here should tell me that I have an or problem. Okay, an or is if they point that way. Okay, it could be either one of those. And an and is if they point to the left. All right, so this is an or problem based on what I see, which means when I graph it, it should be going in two different directions. Okay, so let's go ahead and start working on this. Since the absolute value is already solved for, I don't have to do anything. Well, not solved for, but simplified. I'm going to break it up into two problems. Okay, 10 plus n greater than 3 and 10 plus n less than negative 3. Remember, you have to switch the symbol and you have to switch the sign on the number. Okay, so for the first one, you kind of just leave it alone. And for the second one, you're going to flip that symbol over. So instead of greater than, you do less than. And instead of a 3, you do a negative 3. Okay? So I'm going to subtract by 10 on both sides. To solve for the first one, I get n greater than negative 7. And then on the other side, I'm also going to subtract by 10. And I get n less than negative 13. And I'm done. Like, this is finished. So all I have to do is graph this problem. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to put a number line here. You guys will just have to pick it from an actual number line. So I'll put a negative 15 here, negative 13, negative 11, negative 9, negative 7, negative 5. Okay, so there's my number line. And I'm going to graph both of these. Okay, so n is greater than negative 7. Remember, greater than means that it's an open circle at negative 7. So open circle at negative 7. And since it's pointing to the right, the inequality is pointing to the right, I'm going to go to the right. And then the other one, n is less than negative 13. So I'm going to go to negative 13 and put an open circle right there. Okay, and then I'm going to go to the left. Okay, this is going to go to the left side. And remember, guys, take notes for this because I'm going to let you guys use notes tomorrow. Okay, so you can either take the notes from today and use those tomorrow, or you can use all the notes you've taken and use them tomorrow. It's up to you. There's no limit on how much you can use for now. All right, so we're done with that problem. You're just going to look for that on a multiple choice portion. You'll click on it and you move on. Okay. So I wanted to do one that's a little bit on the tougher side as well. Okay, so notice this one does not have the absolute value solved or isolated anymore. Okay, the absolute value of negative 7a has a -6 next to it and a -7 on the left side. Like, we got to move all that stuff out of there. Okay, so let me just rewrite this really quick just for my purposes of marking stuff down. Okay, so the first thing I want to move out of the way is going to be this -7 on the very far left. So I'm going to add 7 on both sides. Okay, so that gives me -6, absolute value of -7a, less than or equal to -42. All right, so that's my first part of it. Now, my absolute value is still not isolated. There's a -6 that's multiplying. So to get rid of the multiplication, I'm going to divide by -6. Now, this is I don't want to say this is a tricky part of the problem, but since you're dividing both sides by a negative number, you have to flip the inequality. So don't forget about that, okay? So absolute value of -7a is greater than or equal to 7. Notice I flipped the inequality, okay? I flipped the inequality. Now, my absolute value is now isolated. So now I have to make a call as to whether this is an AND problem or an OR problem. What do you guys think it is? It's based on that. It's actually OR. Remember, if it faces to the left, it's an AND. So that's why I wrote it over here for you guys, okay, for your notes. Okay, if it faces left, it's an AND. Right, it's an OR. So look at this right here. Now, I want you guys to notice, over here, it started with AND, didn't it? It was an AND problem to begin with. But we don't make a call as to whether it's an AND or an OR until we have this part all by itself. Once that's by itself, then I make a decision, AND or OR. Okay? So now that I know it's OR, I know that the graph's going to go in two different directions. Let's go ahead and start solving. So I'm going to start with -7a greater than or equal to 7, and -7a less than or equal to -7. Remember, I got to switch the symbol and I got to change the sign on the number. And this one's pretty easy. Just divide both sides by -7. But remember, since we're dividing by a negative number, we got to flip the symbol, right? So I'm going to divide by a -7. So this gives me a less than or equal to -1. And then when I do that to the other side, divide by a -7, I get a greater than or equal to 1. So I'm just going to make a number line here. So here's 0, 1, 2, -1. So there you go. And I'm just going to draw this. I know it's an OR, so they should be going in opposite directions. So a less than or equal to -1, that's a solid circle. And it's going to the left side, so I'm going to go left. And then this one here, a greater than or equal to 1. Well, greater than or equal to is also a solid circle. And it's going to the right side. And there's my answer. Now, these are the hardest questions on the quiz. Me personally, when I looked at the quiz, I'm like, okay, the ones that are going to take them the longest time to do are going to be these. The ones that have absolute value inequalities. Okay? The rest of them, I think, are pretty straightforward. They're not too hard to do. But I think these will be the most challenging ones. Okay? So you can see how much work goes into doing just that one right there. Now, there's some easier ones that you will see, more like this. You can see the work isn't that much. But yeah, there will be some that are a little bit more lengthy, so you're just going to have to take your time with them. Don't rush through them. but you will have 4 of these types. Okay, not these like part B, but 4 of those types of questions. Some will be easy. I think there's only one that's kind of on the harder side, like part B. Any questions so far? All right, so let's look at the slope problems. Now, we're going to do slope in 2 different ways. One of the ways is to do it by counting, by looking at a picture and just counting, right? Up, down, and to the right. The other one, you can see right there, part B, is going to be done by using a formula, okay? But let's start the easier one. You have 4 of these types of questions, like part A. So some of you guys might say that's good because those are easy. We're going to just count to figure out our slope, okay? So my slope, I got to go from this point here, okay, to this point here. Always from left to right, okay? I got to go from the top point to the bottom point. So do I have to rise or fall? Remember, your slope is rise over run, right? Or maybe fall over run. So do you go up or down to go from the point on the left to the point on the right? I got to go down, right? So how many times am I going to go down? Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different times. Now, how many times do I have to go to the right? 1, 2, 3. So my slope is 5/3, right? Or not right? Negative 5/3. Thank you. Yeah, because I went in a downward direction, right? If you go down, you've got to put negative. If you go up, you got to leave it positive. Okay? So your answer is negative 5/3. And there you go. You're going to have 4 of these questions, guys. I mean, these are easy points. Okay? I usually call them gimmies. But yeah, these are the ones you're supposed to get right so that in case you miss something later, you're getting other stuff right and it's going to kind of help you out. Now, part B is based on the slope formula. Okay? So let me write down the slope formula here. Now, you have 2 of these questions to do on your quiz. Just 2 of them. Don't mess them up because these are also supposed to be easies. These are supposed to be gimmies, okay? But you just got to make sure you do these carefully. Take your time. Don't rush through them because if you mess them up, I mean, that's just, it's unfortunate because they're not supposed to be hard to do, okay? So if I were you, make sure you have your formula. Take the time to label your points. Because if you do that, the chances that you mess up are starting to get smaller and smaller. After that, it's just, can you subtract properly, right? And of course, you guys can use calculators if you have them, right? So let's do this right here. So m is equal to y sub 2. What's my y sub 2? 6 minus, what's y sub 1? 12. Thank you. Divided by x sub 2. Negative 10 minus x sub 1, 7. Okay, so far so good. 6 minus 12 is negative 6. Negative 10 minus 7 is negative 17. I mean, this is the right answer, but they're going to want us to simplify. Now, 6 does not go into 17, but a negative divided by a negative, that's a positive, right? So my answer should be a positive 6/17. Okay, so that's what I should be getting as my answer. Again, this problem should not be one that you get wrong. Okay, any of these problems you shouldn't get wrong that are based on the formula. Take your time, label your numbers, and you really can't mess this up unless you get yourself kind of mixed up when you put the numbers in. But it's really hard to mess it up when you take the time to label your stuff properly. I mean, obviously, you can make a calculation error, right? and then that can mess you up. But in most cases, if you're using a calculator, you should be good, right? If you're doing it by in your head, then just be careful when you do it. But it shouldn't be. I'm not giving you numbers that are like 846 minus 138, right? We're keeping the numbers less than 20s or so. So, any questions on the slopes? Notice this is by formula or by counting. Any question on these?
You said you divided the -6 over -17 by the negative to make it positive?
Well, since it's, you know the rule that, negatives divided by negatives are positive, right? I can't divide 6 over 17, but a negative over a negative is still a positive. So yeah, if we get really theoretical, I'll show it to you, but I'll erase it because I don't want people to keep this in their head. Is that the same thing as -6 over -17? What I wrote in purple? Like, are these the same thing? What do you guys think? Are they identical? I mean, they result in the same answer, right? So then what I can do is cancel, and my answer is now positive 6/17, right? But now I've confused people. That's why I'm saying I don't want to do that, right? Let's get rid of this. No one, you didn't see nothing, as they say, right? Yeah, we just got the two negatives and made them positive. That's all. Okay. But yeah, there is a more mathematical way to show that process, but a lot of times it's just more confusing. So it's better just to say two negatives make a positive. There you go. All right, last set. Now this one takes a little bit of time, but the work is not terrible. Okay, but it does take a little bit of time. And after we're done with 3AB, we're done, and you guys can have some free time. Okay. So 3A, they want us to find the x and y intercepts. So what I told you guys to do is to create a table with diagonal zeros. Okay, that's going to guide you into knowing what to do. Now, your x-intercept will show up on the top. The y-intercept will show up over here on the bottom once you do both of these things, okay? But your x-intercept and your y-intercept will be here and there. Okay, that's where they're going to show up. We just got to solve for them. So let's go ahead and do that. I shared with you guys that when I learned this the first time, my teacher said make if statements, right? In other words, set up your problem. I'm gonna let y equal 0, so I'm gonna say if y equals 0. What would happen if y equals 0? Well, I got my main equation up there, so let's plug in a 0 for y. So 3x plus 2 times 0 equals -6. So that's 3x equals -6. And if you divide by 3, you get x equal to -2. So I'm going to put -2 right there. Notice that's my x-intercept is -2. And now I'm going to do the exact same thing, but this time I'm going to say, what if x equals 0? Okay, what happens if x equals 0? So I'll plug it into my formula. Equation, sorry, not formula, but my equation. 3 times 0 plus 2y equals -6. So that gives me 2y equal to -6. Divide both sides by 2. So y is -3. And if all they wanted was the x and y intercepts, I'd be done. But they're going to want you to graph it. Like show them the answer by a graph. So I'm going to have to graph it. So here we go. So I created a 4x4 graph. That means it goes 4 to the right, 4 to the left, 4 up, 4 down. Okay. I'll label a little bit of it, not all of it, but I'll just label the positive sides, okay? So 1 through 4, going up and down, left and right. And I'm just gonna plot these points here, okay? So -2, 0, and 0, -3. I'm gonna put those on my graph. Okay? So -2, 0 is right here. -2, 0 is there. And 0, -3 is right here. So I'm just gonna graph a line here, okay? To connect those dots. And there you go. So I'm gonna look for a picture that looks like that. Okay, I'm just gonna look for a picture that looks like that on my multiple choice test. So notice the work to do this wasn't hard. It was lengthy. I think I told you guys that. It wasn't a hard problem to do. It's just going to take a little while. Okay, not like questions 1, part A and B. Those took a while and they weren't super easy, but they took a while. These are a lot easier, but they still take a little bit of time. I think you have 4 of these type of problems. Okay? And then you have 2 of these. Find the y-intercept. So notice, not find the x and y-intercept, just the y-intercept. Now, I gave you guys a hint when I gave you the notes the other day. If it says y-intercept, let x equal 0. If it says x-intercept, you let y equal 0. So notice, if I go back to your notes from the other day, you see right here? If they say find the x-intercept, you let y equal 0. If they say find the y-intercept, you let x equal 0. Okay, so that was in your notes from the other day. So I'm just following that same hint. Okay, find the y-intercept, so let x equal 0. So all I'm going to do is plug in x equal to 0 and solve. So here we go. 2 times 0 plus 4y equals 16. Well, that means 4y equals 16. And if I divide both sides by 4, I get that y is equal to 4. Thank you. And that's it, guys. That's your y-intercept. And that is our review for this quiz.